All right, so we need a couple things to kind of pop off inside this load selected parts function. This is just going to call our asset manager. I am going to copy this code and then just talk about it because it's just going to be way quicker here. All right, let me alt insert. Actually, let's just include this asset manager here. And instead of this being slots, this is going to be part slots. This is a rider optimization. Basically, you can call this slots or you can call this slot right here. And this just allows you to not have to say slot dot part name. It just optimizes it for you. You can see it gives me a suggestion here. Let's see what it says if I hover over it. It says name slot variable violates. Oh, well, that's that. But there's actually an optimization that it tries to make where if it sees you doing this, it'll say, oh man, you can just, replace this with a structured binding, which I didn't know actually existed, but that's pretty dope. So you got the part slot, which is the enum. You got the part type name tag, which is the name tag that we set up, and then the actual part name tag, which is the specific part. So basically what's happening in this code is we get our asset manager if it's valid. We create this empty array of asset IDs. We create this empty array of asset IDs to load. And then what we do is iterate over the asset IDs that this asset manager gets, because asset manager and get primary asset ID list, this returns an array, or it outputs an array to this asset ID list. It outputs an array to this asset ID list based on this primary asset type, which we will set up in the editor. Just follow this code. We want it to be a F primary asset type, and you can just construct it with the F name here and call it character part. We'll set this up in the asset manager later. And then we iterate over those asset IDs, and we check to see if the asset ID's primary asset name, remember I was telling you guys about that little trick in the data asset. This is so that you don't have to cast this data asset or actually construct the object and then cast the object to this class and then get this part type name. You can actually just set this asset's primary asset name to the tag name. That way, what you can do is compare it against the part tag name that we get from our parts here. And then this will all tie together. This will all tie together in the end. All right. It's going to make sense. So if this asset name is the same as this part type tag name, which it should be if it is, we want to add this asset ID to the asset IDs to load. And then we want to break this loop, because since we're doing a nested for loop, we don't want this to iterate over all of the items when we really just need to find one and add it to the list, because there's only going to be one that equates to the same part type name. So, and I'll show you that in the editor why there's only going to be one part, because instead of making a bunch of data assets with different type tag names, we're going to make one data asset for the head, one data asset for the torso, one for the legs, one for the arms, and then inside of there we're going to have all of these different values for the different parts. That's what this is for. But like I said, I'll tie that together when we get there. Once we have this array filled, we'll tell the asset manager to load all the primary assets, giving it the asset IDs to load. Give it an empty bundle here, this T array F name with an empty parentheses here just creates an empty T array of F names. Because we don't have any bundles to load. And then you want to do here, let's make this smaller so you can see this. You want to do this F streamable delegate create U object. This is the delegate that whenever this function is finished loading, it will call this function here. We want it to call a modular character skin on parts loaded. And we want to pass it the asset IDs to load. And we also want to pass it the part slots so that we can use this when it's actually loaded, because we're going to need to do a couple of things here. This function, all it does is load the asset ID. It loads the assets. It doesn't load any of the data that's on the asset. This allows the loading time to be faster in case we want to do something like a UI that loads up a widget for us or something like that. We could just load it here instead of loading the entire asset. And that's something that we will do. Matter of fact, let me navigate to our actual character part item. And I want to add one more thing. And this is not going to be a soft pointer. It's going to actually be actually we could make it a soft pointer because Unreal is oh my God, Unreal is very sexy. So let's make this a soft object pointer. And this is going to be a U. Let's make it a for declaration of U texture 2D. And this is going to be our part icon. And so this is going to be something that we use to kind of display the part icon for the class, and we'll do some other things later on. All right, once these parts are loaded, we want to do some things with it. Let me grab this code, and let me know if you like these videos a little bit more than the videos where I type out line by line. It takes 45 minutes to do one video. I'm trying to make the video shorter because it is videos. You can pause it, look at the code. I'm making sure everything's on the screen for you. So take advantage of technology. You dig what I'm saying? So this is actually not a character part item. This is, what do we call it here? It is. Okay. I made the name and structure the same as my project. I'm basically giving you guys code directly from my own project. Now you can see here, I'm doing some things with the materials, but we don't have materials here. So what is happening in here? Let's pass this the correct function, and we'll walk through it. Once again, we get the asset manager if it's valid. So if this is not valid, it'll just exit this. You should probably put an else in a comment to let you know, like a print string to let you know that this failed. But if you are not blowing up your spot, the asset manager should always exist in the project. We then create this T array of fsoft object path. This is the actual objects, like separate objects. This is like static meshes, skeletal meshes, textures, all these things. These get kind of saved as fsoft object paths before they're loaded. If they're a soft reference, they are soft object paths. So this is our path that we want to load. And once again, Ryder does this optimization right here with the for each. This is a for each loop. Just in case you guys don't know this, I should also mention my tutorials are not for beginners. If you're a beginner, you're going to struggle because this is advanced code. This is intermediate to advanced code, man. But if you're a part of my Patreon, I will have the code in one of my tiers. If you want access to the code where you don't have to type it, I will put that inside of a tier on my Patreon. I know it's an extra cost, but hey, I'm giving you free code, bro. But I'm giving you the code and saving you the time. So if you just want the code, you can subscribe to my Patreon. So yeah, these are for each loops. This is a for each loop right here. Don't get confused just because of the way that Ryder did this. So for each of these part slots, we want to check over these assets that got loaded. And we want to make sure that it is a character part item first off. And you do that by doing U character part item pointer part item is equal to the asset manager get primary asset object and pass it the type that you want this, that you are expecting this asset to be, this asset right here. And if it is not a part item, just continue through this. Just continue through this, because if it's not a part item, we don't even want to do the rest of the code. Continue, basically, we'll restart the for loop or the for each loop with the next iteration. And then we go on to see if the part item's primary asset ID's primary asset name is not equal to this part type name tag, get tag name. These are two F names that we're comparing here. If these aren't equal, that means that this part that we're on is not the same part that we're on here. You get what I mean? So if we're on part type name, part type dot head dot mail, and this is actually a part type leg dot mail, we don't want to do any more of this code because it's not going to matter. So we'll just continue, start it over. And then the last check before we actually do the code we want to do is check if this part mesh contains anything in the map. Remember, we made this T map on the actual part item that has a key that's a F gameplay tag, which is this part name tag, and we're seeing if that key contains any values. If it does not, we want to continue because this code is also not going to work. And then finally, what we want to do is take this array that we created up here and add that part item's part mesh in the slot of the part name tag. This is how you get the the slot inside the map. You can also do get ref or get, I think hold on, let me see what the actual name of these while I'm saying this. Just in case you guys don't know about T-maps. You might be advanced, but you might not know about T-maps. Part item dot part mesh, and you would say get or ref, find ref. That's what you would say. Find ref, or another way to do it is just to pass it this element right here, the part name tag. And that's also why we checked if it contains, because if you do it this way, this will crash if this doesn't contain anything. So this is like a safety measure both ways. And then we want to get the body part mesh, which is that tsoft object pointer of the use skeletal mesh. And we want to convert that to a soft object path. And so that'll convert it to this fsoft object path and add it to that array. We want to do the same thing with the body part anim BP, converting that to a soft object path. And then once this for loop is done, all these loops are done, it's got all the assets put inside of this path that we want to load. We tell the asset manager to load the asset list, and we pass it the path to load. And then we create this fstreamable delegate with this create u object, passing it this object and a reference to, or the address of, our on meshes loaded function, and pass it the loaded assets as well, and then pass it the part slots as well, because we still need that data. That data is how we're filtering things and putting things in the right place. If you have a better way to optimize this without passing this data through, go ahead and try it. I don't suggest you doing it during the tutorial. Do that shit afterwards, because I don't want to solve your issues that you created. If it's my issues that I created, I can help you. But if it's your issues that you created, come on, man, take it easy on your boy. All right, so this last function is a doozy, brother. It's a doozy, okay? So I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to bring it over here and let y'all see how many lines of code this is, all right? And this is why programmers get paid the big bucks. Boom. You dig what I'm talking about? You dig what I'm talking about? Look at that. Phew. Shoo-wee. We don't need this because this is something specific to my project. If you did take my first person, how can I say this? If you did take my first person YouTube course, you will probably need to do this. Just because what I'm doing here with the first person is, if it's the arms, we set the arms mesh, and you can see I commented this out because I'm supposed to bring this back when I make my own custom assets, because the arms have their own bones and animations, so I want to have all the custom assets kind of working with each other before I do this. But what needs to happen is you need to give the arms the same material from this third person, so that the third person arms and the first person arms link up, like they're actually the same arms. So if you got like a skin with snakes on the hand, and they got like all these wristbands and tattoos on their arms, you want that to be seen in first person. So you would need to do this code right here. But I'm gonna show y'all what it looks like so you can see it. But if you don't have any of this stuff, it's not gonna make any sense. So there's no need to do that. I'm gonna get rid of this. We don't need the character owner. We can just let's clean this up a little bit. This is actually called torso, and we can get rid of this code for the first person stuff. If I could select today. Okay. Whew, I need a sip of water. Hold on. Talking makes your voice crazy, boy. All right. Got a candle blowing too. Maybe that's what it is. All right. So basically what we're doing in this function is, if we have a valid asset manager, which we should, we are iterating over these part slots. And for each of these part slots, we want to check these loaded asset slots. Once again, I am doing a nested for each loop, but there's no other way to do this. If you have a more optimized way to do this, please share that code with me inside of the Discord. I would love to see a more optimized way to not nest a for each loop, because I know that creates some load times or some cycles. It like makes the cycles a little bit longer on the CPU, because it's iterating over this and then it iterates over that. But in my mind, I needed to iterate over this array and iterate over this array at the same time. So for each of these part slots, you can see here we got this, I forget what this is called again. This is basically a for each loop, and it just separates all these things out for me. For each of these, we want to iterate over these loaded assets, and these are loaded by the asset manager, so they will have all their data on them, so we will be able to access all that data. But we still want to make sure that it's a character part item, because something might have happened. By using that same function from earlier, get primary asset object, passing it the type of the character part type or the character part item, and we want to use the asset that we are currently on here. The next thing we want to check is the naming structure. Make sure that this is the same part. Make sure that this, if this is part type head.mail or part type.head.mail, that this is also part type.head.mail. If not, continue, start over. And then once again, make sure that this part mesh map contains something, contains a value from this key. If not, continue. So we want to switch based off of that part meshes inside of this key. Whatever value comes out of this key here, and we want to get that part slot. That's why we added that enum, because we want to know what the part slot is, because, you know what I'm saying, based off of the part slot, we need to either do something for the head, the torso, the arms, or the legs. And what needs to happen is for each of the materials, because you might have set up some defaults just to get some look dev stuff going on, and we will do that to like test the anime, like test to make sure that everything lines up correctly and things like that. So for each of the and this is another for, this is a for loop, a for each loop, nested for each loop, and then we have another nested for loop. But that's just the way it's got to go. So for each of these materials, we want to clear out all of the materials, set them to null pointer, so that when we set the mesh, it doesn't use the materials that were already set in there. We also want to set this skin asset to null pointer just to clear out every reference. And then what we want to do is set this skin asset and update it to the body part mesh that comes out of that T-map. So, and you do need to use .get, because this is technically a soft reference, and .get gets the actual pointer reference. Then we want to set the anim instance class to that body part anim BP from that part item as well. And remember, .get gets the pointer reference, or the actual pointer. And we only want to do this for the head, because the head is the only thing that will have an animation blueprint. The rest of these are just going to follow the head. That's why we set up that lead pose component code up here in the constructor. So they all follow the head. Moving on, for the torso, we're doing basically this code that we called here. You just copy and paste it, and it's the same thing for each one of the parts, minus the anim instance class being set. Please do not do that. And once that's done, I'm gonna keep it a buck with y'all. That is the bulk of the system. The rest of it is just UI and loading, saving and loading, which we will get into in the next section. But this is the bulk of the system. So if you guys are ready for that, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.